meeting for today. My name is Alberta Hemsley, and Katie and I, Katie, you want to just wave back there, Katie?
What?
Just wave your hand. Katie and I kind of started this organization, and it continues to go on. 2 years and over 100 speakers, and we have continued to keep going. It just happens, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
And once again, kudos to the scheduling committee. I've got 7 people on the
Kudos to the scheduling committee. Notice it on your table somewhere around and somewhere within reach. You have on a schedule until the end of March.
We should get a free lunch once in a while.
That's fine. We have wonderful speakers, and today we have some special speakers for you in just a moment. Let's see. I went to a wonderful Democratic meeting last night in Mount Adams. Very nice. I have to be really impressed by the way some of the people live in this neighborhood. It's really good. And they have an awfully, how do I say it? It's just really involved. I mean, they not only have precinct captains, they have street captains. I mean, that is really impressive. They really have it organized over there. And I should be so organized in my little precinct. It's good. And let me tell you, this year it may happen. Oh my goodness. Okay. And I will find out more tonight when I go to a meeting that Gwen McFarland is going to be having for precinct executives and ward chairmen. And she's going to be organizing all, she's going to have it in her house, and I don't understand how that's all going to happen because there's something like 70 precincts in our little organization here. Okay. Okay. So we're going to start today with announcements, as we usually do. Do we have an out? Oh, Peter's back! Peter, welcome back. Peter, who had a daughter get married, that was really exciting. And then he came home sick. That was not good. And he has cards. Gotta turn it on. Face it so it's kind of horizontal to the ground. The button is up.
If anyone has announcements they would like in the newsletter, please take a card and print as clearly as you can what you would like. And if you're not on the mailing list, also clearly print your whole name and clearly print your email address. Thank you.
Peter's really good at that. Just get your information to him.
Testing. I don't have an announcement, but there's just something I want us to pay attention to. Elizabeth Warren has made a proposal that I think is fabulous. She said to do an asset tax on anybody with over 50 million. Anybody in here got 50 million?
Okay, Mike said maybe. He gave us cookies today.
2% asset tax, anybody with 50 million. Between 50 million and a billion. Over a billion, 3%. So she's running for president. I'm supporting her.
There you go.
Socialist, people say.
Okay. Go for it.
Hi, Monica Leroy back. Long recovery from foot surgery. Anyway.
Can't hear you.
Long recovery from foot surgery. Nice to see you back. I also have signs that are in Spanish. Remember the neighborhood signs? We welcome you. We don't care where you're from. I still have them available for $10. Some of them are still here. Some of them are in Nepalese. Because we have a large contingent of them here in Cincinnati. So if you're interested, you can contact me, and I'll put my contact information in the newsletter as well. Thank you very much.
Okay, Mike.
Yeah, we have birthday boy here. Dick says he's 49, but I don't believe him. And I'm 97, so we have cookies over here. Be sure to get the cookies from Costco. I baked them this morning.
And we're going to have a special birthday party for Dick in, is it August? In August, he will turn 100. We will give you warning, but we're going to have a party in addition to a regular lunch that day. An august occasion, says William Messer. There you go.
Two announcements here. The scheduling committee, which I talked about earlier, will meet next Tuesday morning at 9:30 at Lydia's on Ludlow to basically start our scheduling for April and May. And second of all, the Poor People's Campaign is sponsoring a summit on Saturday from 2 to 5 on water. The quality of our water, the cost of our water, incredibly important because the Ohio River, where the majority of people from Ohio get their water, is becoming more polluted because of the relaxation of restrictions. So it's very important that we are aware of what's going on and continue this fight. So 2 to 5 at the United Methodist Church on Clifton Avenue, and it's sponsored by the Poor People's Campaign. So if you need more information, look up under the Poor People's Campaign on Facebook.
And you'll put that in, you'll give that to Peter, right?
Right.
Peter will get your card.
I'd have a couple of things, if I might. I guess you, like myself, have been terribly upset about the Venezuela situation, and we've had a lot of discussion on Facebook about it, and I'm surprised at the number of people who think it's okay for us to help create the coup there. And who knows what this will lead to. And then this terrible man, Elliot Abrams, is now becoming the dialoguer about all of this. And he's one of the worst people that ever lived. I mean, gosh, he supported the genocide in Guatemala. Yeah, he's a terrible man. Elliot Abrams.
You're okay, we can hear you.
Okay. So anyway, that, and then Marlena maybe will speak of this too, but there was a wonderful meeting at the school board last night.
Yay!
And they at least have, unanimously I believe, a resolution to work out the details of the Good Food Coalition, which will be a wonderful thing if we could get that here. Better food for children and food brought in from local people and farmers. Sustainable. You know, sustainable. It's a wonderful thing.
Give it to Marlena.
So the announcement I was going to make didn't have to do with the Good Food Purchasing Program, but since Martha gave me the segue, I'll just speak a little about that. School board did vote on adopting the resolution last night, so now it has to go to policy committee to work out all the details. Jessica Shelley is their food services director right now, and she's putting out requests for proposals for different sources, and I suggested to her a sort of local source for dairy, so I hope that gets in there. It's Snowville Creamery, based out of Pomeroy, Ohio. We've got food insecurity, hunger, poor nutrition. They're all symptoms of poverty. We see it in these kids in this district, and they're barriers to learning. So this Good Food Purchasing Program is not only going to help fill their stomachs, but help them be able to learn better, which helps break cycles of poverty. So, I support it, but the real announcement I had to make is that I am holding a fundraiser on February 28th, it's a Thursday, at Westside Brewing at 7 o'clock. I'll be there with my husband, who will be cooking up some barbecue, weather permitting, and got a few folks here who will say it's worth it just for the food. So I hope that, just as Christine and Rupa, if you can make it to that, that would be great. Free food and free entertainment. So thank you very much.
Now wait a second, Marlena.
7 p.m. on February 28th.
Marlena is our person for, that we hope to send to the Board of Education for Cincinnati Public Schools.
And Marlena
Purple hair, and
spoke.
she's,
Marlena spoke in front of the board yesterday. I did as well. I think maybe someone else from here spoke, and they really listened, and they all fell in line, and unanimity. You don't see that very often.
there we go. Other announcements? Other announcements? Okay, and me, I didn't bring my my iPad today for Sid because it was all out of energy. I had to plug it in. Too bad. Oh well. Back there, we have in the stroller, we have our 2-year-old Democrat. That is our future. We just want you to know that Sid comes with a very wonderful mother who is part of getting rid of dark money. We have a whole bunch of people here who are interested in getting rid of dark money. And for those of you who are interested in Move to Amend, we have a whole bunch of representatives here. So where's Karen and Dick? Karen and Dick are here having a wonderful lunch, and just know that we have people who are interested in doing that if you're interested in joining them. Who else? Who else? Other announcements? Okay, and without that, without any further ado, I'm going to give this microphone to Sue Magnus because she's going to introduce our speakers for today. Here you go.
The group that we are welcoming today is from Prokids. I've driven by that building many times and wondered what goes on there. And it's in Clifton, isn't it Taft and Reading, or Taft and Burnett? Yeah. And now we'll find out. There's so much need in Cincinnati with our high poverty rate, and the effects on children are profound. The criminal justice system hasn't helped, locking up so many parents. And we have a lot of children who have no family and have great needs, and Prokids intervenes for them through the courts. And they'll tell you more. Oh, this is Mary Kay Koehler.
That's all right. Thanks, Sue. Thank you so much for having us out today. I'm Mary Kay Koehler. I'm a senior relationship manager at Prokids. And I just want to tell you, actually, I want to ask, do we have any CASA volunteers here? One. Thank you. And how many of you have heard about Prokids before today? Hey, good. Quite a few of you. So I hope that after I talk for a little while, you'll have a better understanding of what we do, and maybe you're moved to help out in some way. But Prokids is part of a national CASA program, and CASA stands for Court Appointed Special Advocates. And we advocate in court for abused and neglected children in Hamilton County. We were founded in 1981 as a joint partnership between the Junior League, the Cincinnati Bar Association, and the Hamilton County Juvenile Court. We're actually older than our state organization, and we're one of the first 25 CASA programs in the United States. So we have a very long history in our city, and we have some outstanding outcomes that I'll share with you in just a few minutes. So I just want you to think about this question in your own mind. Do you think that child abuse and neglect of someone else's child is a problem that affects you? Well, I'm in a very wonderful room because many of you have said yes. Some people say no. They say, that's not my child, that's a private family matter, and I shouldn't be involved in that, that doesn't concern me. Or there's a court or a government agency like Job and Family Services who is supposed to take care of these problems, right? But what I want you to understand is that it is a myth to believe that it doesn't affect all of us, or that a government agency can handle this problem by themselves. Last year in Hamilton County, there were over 4,100 children in foster care. Every time I say that number, I am astounded. I've lived here almost my entire life, and it is troubling, to say the least, that there are that many kids in our community that need help. So that's 4,100 children whose parents have failed them to such a degree that a government agency like Job and Family Services and the court are now responsible for those children's care and well-being. And that is an 18% increase over the year before. We are seeing these numbers rise at a very dramatic pace, year after year. Foster care was meant to meet the needs of our children on a very temporary basis. It was not meant to be a long-term solution that it has become for some of our children. Some things about foster care that might surprise you or that you might not know is that 25% of new children entering the system are under the age of 1. And in general, most children will spend up to 24 months in care. So you might have an infant spending the first 2 years of their lives in foster care. That is a lifetime for these children. They are growing and changing, on a daily basis. And so foster care is not an ideal situation for them. And children in foster care are actually 30% more likely to be abused in foster care than children in the general population. And probably most alarming of all is that in our country as a whole, 1,500 children will die every year from child abuse and neglect. So this is a problem that affects all of us because this is our future, our children that we are losing.
Could you repeat that?
Yeah, there's 1,500 children in our country every year will die from child abuse and neglect. Yeah. 1,500. But Prokids has found a way to change these outcomes through the use of our court-appointed special advocates. Now, children are assigned to Prokids based on the day that their case comes into court. So the more CASA volunteers we have, the more cases we will be able to take. I want to tell you a little bit about the children that we serve. We serve children anywhere from newborns to young adults. Most are placed in foster care, but some live with their biological families. Some are living in residential facilities, foster homes, and even in hospitals. Our children are the beautiful baby girl that will be born at University Hospital addicted to heroin, and she cannot stop screaming. Our children are the 5-year-old blue-eyed boy with burns on his body, and he won't tell the doctors what happened. Our children are the 9-year-old frail little girl in dirty clothes who will finally tell her favorite teacher that her father is abusing her. And our children are the 14-year-old on the street corner in the middle of a school day. He should be in school. What's going on? Well, Mom didn't come home again last night, and he has to figure out a way to bring home food for his younger brothers and sisters. These are our children, and to help them, we need people just like you to open their eyes and their hearts to see these kids. This year, our goal is to serve 1,000 of these children, of the 4,100 children in our system, and so we need every person on board, as many people on board as we can get. Most people think that the plight of abuse and neglect is hopelessly insurmountable. And honestly, I feel like that some days too, because it's just unbelievable what's happening to our kids. But what I want you to understand is that Prokids is making a big difference for our children. And it begins with this single individual, this volunteer. It's not a mentor, but it's this court-appointed special advocate who is a powerful voice for these voiceless children. Each CASA volunteer is assigned a foster child, and their job is to make sure that that child is safe, that all of their needs are being met, and that ultimately they're in a safe, permanent, nurturing home. In Prokids, we have some very impressive outcomes, some of which we've maintained for over 2 decades. 97% of our children are on grade level, or they're receiving educational services that they need to succeed in school. Nationally, children will move about 1 time for every year they're in foster care. Every time they move, they lose between 3 and 6 months of academic progress, which is one of the reasons why only about half of kids in foster care will graduate from high school by the time they're 18. 89% of our children experience stability. They don't make these moves that are so common in foster care. 80% of our children are placed with their brothers and sisters. You know, we don't think about that, but when children are removed from their home, typically they are also removed from their siblings. And we're able to keep them together as much as possible because we understand that that is one of the only bonds to their family that they will have for the rest of their lives. And 93% of our children lived in a safe, permanent home when their case was closed. And 99% of our children were free from abuse and neglect. And that is a rate we've maintained for over 20 years. Thank you. Now, just in case there are any interested parties, I want to tell you what you need to do to be a CASA volunteer. So you must be 21 years old, but we recently had a CASA volunteer retire at age 84. So if you can do it, you can do it. Our CASA volunteers do not require any knowledge about foster care or the law. What they do need to do is come to a very robust training called CASA University. We give you all of the information and skills that you need to be successful on your case. You have to pass a background check, have interviews, and you must have a flexible schedule that allows you to, work the case. That means going to court, going to meetings, scheduling meetings, talking on the phone and over email. And this volunteer opportunity takes between 2 and 4 hours of work a week. Sometimes it's more at the beginning of your case, and it'll be less perhaps as the case moves on. And we also ask our CASA volunteers to give 1 year of their time to our children. They have so many people in and out of their lives that we like to be a stable person for a little while. So what exactly do our CASAs do? Well, they are the eyes and ears of the court. After receiving the case, they do an extensive review of what caused the child to come into care, what's going on with the parents, and then they formulate, all right, what is in this child's best interest? So they get to decide things like, can they visit with their parents? How long are those visits? Do those visits need to be supervised or can they be unsupervised? What does the child need? Do they need speech therapy, counseling, other help with school? And what do the parents need? Do they need drug and alcohol treatment, mental health services, parenting classes? Our CASAs formulate an opinion as to what is in the child's best interest, and they advocate that to anyone and everyone who will listen, but most importantly, to the juvenile court magistrate. Now, maybe as I've explained this, you are thinking, wow, that is unbelievable that we allow regular people to do this work, but we have been for over 30 years. And it's people just like you who have a passion for our children that really make a huge difference in their lives. And you don't ever do this work alone. Our CASA volunteers are supported by a child advocacy team consisting of the CASA, who's the expert on the child and the family, a CASA manager, who is the expert on the services that are available for the child, and a staff attorney, who is an expert on the law and how best to advocate your position to the court. I just want to end with a story about a little girl named Michelle. And I hope you will come to realize that it really only takes one person that can make a big difference for a child. Michelle's case entered court the day after her case, Michelle's case entered court the day after the police were called to her home. 4-year-old Michelle was living with her father. Her father invited a guest into the home and got into a very heated argument. Her father pulled a gun out and began making threats to the guest. The police were eventually called and Michelle's father was arrested. What the police found in the home is what caused them to call Job and Family Services immediately. Michelle was living in what the system calls a dirty home. Now, what you and I might consider dirty is not what Michelle was living in. She was living in squalor. There was, furniture tipped over. I have a few pictures. I'll just show up here for you. You know, you can't even tell which way is up on some of these. Clothes all over the place, furniture in disarray, there was rotting garbage all over the place. There was pornographic material lying out in the room, you know, where Michelle had access to, like, completely inappropriate things such as this. And, you know, what we kind of can't imagine is how horrible it smelled in there. And Michelle lived in that every day. She was so badly infested with lice that when she was taken to the foster family that night, you know, her head eventually had to be shaved. She didn't know how to use a fork or a spoon, and she was 4. She didn't know how to eat cereal out of a bowl. These are things that children younger than that already know how to do. So, you know, it continues to surprise me that children love their parents. You know, it doesn't matter what has happened, they want to be with their parents. And so think about Michelle that night. She saw the police come and arrest her father. Then she saw this person who said they were a caseworker from Job and Family Services there to help her. She doesn't know who this person is. The caseworker made the very best decision that she could and removed Michelle, put her in the back seat of her car, and took her down to Job and Family Services to wait for a foster family to be found that night. Michelle had a lot of questions. You know, in her own words, she wondered, you know, where's my dad? Where am I? Who are all these people, and when can I go home? And these are questions that we couldn't answer for Michelle that night, and some of the questions we couldn't answer for weeks to come. So no matter how necessary a move is for a child, it's a very scary and traumatic time for them. Now, all of this happens in Job and Family Services can't simply remove a child without making sure that everyone's rights are upheld. So almost every day of the week in court in Hamilton County, a day 1 case hearing is heard. Prokids takes between 3 and 5 days a month of these types of hearings, and any cases that come in, we take those cases. So that day, Job and Family Services was there, represented by their attorney, to state why they needed to remove Michelle. Michelle's parents were there. They were afforded an attorney to represent their side of the case. And by law, a guardian ad litem or a best interest advocate must be present to represent what's in the child's best interest. And at Prokids, that's our CASA manager, the person who oversees our CASA volunteers. So we were there, we took the case, and we knew that Kelly had just completed CASA University and was ready for a case. The CASA manager called Kelly and told her about Michelle and said, would you like to take this case? And she said, absolutely. I want to be someone who's finally going to stand up for this little girl and help her. Now, Job and Family Services caseworkers sometimes juggle a caseload of, you know, more than 20 families at a time. And Michelle was very lucky to have a Prokids CASA on her case because Kelly could just focus on Michelle. Kelly worked with Michelle's new preschool to get her the services that she needed. She got her into therapy, and she attended some of those sessions with Michelle. And she worked hard to coordinate the meetings between some of the therapists and the new foster parents. At Prokids, we believe very strongly that children should go home to their parents if their parents can make some very necessary changes. Now, there are some types of long-term abuse and neglect which eliminate parents from the beginning, but if they can learn to live differently, we want the kids to go home. So Kelly worked with Michelle's parents in hopes that they would make some needed changes. They worked services for a little while and then would kind of disappear and come back and disappear. And so Kelly thought, all right, what are we going to do now? So they started looking for maybe there's a family friend or relative that could take care of Michelle. And after doing some research, there was no one available or appropriate to care for Michelle. When Michelle's parents made the decision to move to Florida without her, that's when Kelly started looking at our next option, which is an adoptive home, a loving family for Michelle. So Kelly worked with Job and Family Services to identify the very best adoptive home for Michelle. And unfortunately, this family didn't live in Hamilton County, they lived about an hour away. So Kelly made the trip to visit the family several times, sometimes with Michelle and sometimes on her own, just to make sure that this family understood that this needed to be a permanent solution for Michelle. This wasn't something that they could leave and back out of later. She made sure that all of those services were transferred up to the new community for Michelle so that she didn't lose all of that great progress she had been making. And all along the way, she also tried to help Michelle understand what was happening. I'm very happy to share with you that this is Miss Cutie Patootie Michelle in her little pool in her backyard. You know, she is a totally different child because she can just be a kid. She's not worried about feeling unsafe. Definitely is very, very loved and safe and playful. And these are all things that were not in the cards for her not that long ago. So it really only took one person believing that they could help and made a big difference for this little girl. You know, as I said, sometimes this work is overwhelming, but thank you for having me and Prokids here today to talk to you, because word of mouth is one of the best ways we have to get, our word out. And so, if anybody is interested in learning a little bit more about Prokids, I have some brochures. And I hope that one thing that everyone will do is become a Prokids ambassador. So if you are interested in what we do, please share what you've heard today with just one other person. And maybe they'll be interested in learning more too. We hold information sessions about every other week at our office for anybody who wants to learn a little bit more about our work. So thank you again.
I'm a big
Question over here.
Oh, yeah.
It's not really a question. I'm a big fan of Prokids, and I was very impressed several years ago when they were one of the first nonprofits that asked you to make a 3-year financial commitment. So if you're going to give $100, if you make that commitment for 3 years, they'll send you a letter at the end of the year with the tax stuff and then remind you that you made a pledge for 3. And my 3-year commitments turned into about 8 or 10.
Yes, thank you, Doc.
Are you aware of fetal alcohol syndrome, prenatal alcohol exposure? A lot of those kids have that. And years ago, there wasn't much done for them. Is there anything going on for that now? People used to have to go to the Columbus Children's Hospital to get diagnosed for it. So, I don't know. You getting anywhere with that here?
Unfortunately, that's a little bit out of my realm of information, but I would imagine that Children's Hospital, and we refer our children to their services for many different things. I'm sorry, I don't have a better answer for you on that. Anybody else? Yeah.
Yes. The residential facilities, do you know how many there are and how many children can be accommodated and the age range?
Do you, Sarah, or she? Yeah, some of the residential facilities are not located in Cincinnati. Many are out of town. I believe there's one also up in Michigan. Depends on, I guess, what level of care these children need. And so the facility types vary.
When you talk about a CASA volunteers 3 to 4 hours a week, typically, is there a guidance in what they are supposed to do during that week? And how does that play out?
Yeah, we talk a lot about that in our training. And so some of it is, desk work at your home where you're reviewing the case, figuring out the best course of action. It's also a good deal of emailing between your CASA manager and anybody else that you're working with in your advocacy team, your attorney, to figure out the next action that needs to happen. There's court visits, but it depends on what's going on in the case. Some weeks you'll have very little to do, and other weeks you'll have more to do, more research or longer court visits. Yep.
Is parent training ever required, or is anybody advocating for parent training for anybody who wants to have a child? And is parent training required at any stage in what services children need?
Yeah, we highly encourage our parents, that's part of what our parents are doing to have the ability to have their child back in their custody, is parenting classes along with any other kind of treatment that they might need. Mental health treatment, alcohol, drug addiction treatment, that is all part of the big picture. We really want the kids to go home if possible, and so we try to help the parents get whatever help and skills that they need to be successful.
Who's teaching parental training? I mean, who's doing parental training?
So in my case, the parents were told by the magistrate after we showed them all the evidence of what was going on. They went to Beach Acres to do their parent training, and then we also had a group called it's a homemaker services group, because a lot of times these homes are very just unlivable circumstances. So homemaker services would help them learn to clean their homes and keep their homes, where the children can thrive. So yes, we work on bringing the services, a lot of stuff through email and call.
I just wondered, what would have happened to Michelle if you had not been able to help her?
Well, she would have definitely been in this foster care system.
Will you follow up?
Sure, she would have been in the foster care system, and so the other 3,000 plus children that are in foster care that we don't serve, they're served by a guardian ad litem at the public defender's office. They do a lot of this, they do the same work, they're required to do the same kinds of work, but the thing that they don't have is they don't have a volunteer force helping them do the work. So those guardian ad litems may have 30 cases at a time, and our same type of person at Prokids might have that same caseload, but then they have CASA volunteers helping them do the work. So it's just more eyes were on Michelle in this case.
So what was the number again of the kids you can help, of the ones who come to court?
We hope to serve 1,000 children this year out of the 4,100.
Thank you.
Right there.
I wondered if one of the jobs is helping with transportation, like to get the parents to a parent training piece. And another question is, how often, on average, does the advocate visit with the child and meet with the child?
Good question. So the CASAs are required to visit their child once a month. And that visit looks a little bit, they need to visit the child where the child spends the most amount of time. So wherever they're living, they'll visit, or maybe at home. It's different than like a mentor relationship where they might go take them out to do something fun. They might take the child like to a park or somewhere close by to kind of talk with them more privately, but they're really trying to see how's the child doing, as opposed to having fun, which is important, but that's not what this role does, right? And then what was your first question? I forget.
Transportation.
Oh, transport. Yeah, Prokids doesn't transport the parents. No. Yeah. Yeah, Job and Family Services would help get the parents to and from those things.
Mary Kay, did I understand that the volunteers are on for about a year and then rotate off? Is that correct?
Yes and no. We ask a volunteer to give a year of their time, and sometimes the case will be finished within a year, and sometimes it won't be finished. And so if they're able to continue on, we ask that they stay on.
Thank you, because I could imagine a year ending and the case is still in process, and you can't substitute volunteers, that
Yes.
contact, I think. Secondly, if you had a magic wand standing here today, how many volunteers would you like to have show up tomorrow?
How many volunteers? Well, let me get out my fancy strategic plan right here and tell you. This year we would like 365 CASA volunteers to serve 1,000 children. Last year we had 267 CASA volunteers, so we have some work to do.
I am a CASA volunteer, and actually I have a child under the age of 5, so I do have to visit that child twice a month. And my child's living in Dark County, so it's quite a trip.
Yeah, and that's the other thing. Is your child with a foster family?
Yes.
Yeah, so there's not enough foster families in Hamilton County. So all of our cases originate here in Hamilton County, but they often live, even with just a foster family, outside. It's kind of wherever they can be placed. So yeah, thank you for doing that.
So I would suggest also, if you know anybody who's interested in being a foster parent, because Hamilton County really has a shortage of foster parents.
Yeah.
So, you know, I mean, my child, I think, is doing great up in Dark County, but it takes me like about 2 hours to actually get up to visit him, and then 2 hours back. So, yeah.
Thank you for what you're doing.
So when you have children spread out so far, are those other services, the caseworkers, coming from Hamilton County, or do you have a relationship with other counties where, you know, a social worker or caseworker can have that more convenient access? Because it seems, I used to be a caseworker in children's services with foster care a long time ago, and it was really hard to keep track of children living so far out. And you spend so much time driving, and it's just really hard. I'm wondering if there's improved logistics on that, if there's cooperative services between the counties.
I'm not sure about the services exactly, but the caseworkers are responsible for visiting the children, regardless of where they live. And so it's a problem. And Job and Family Services also cut the transportation portion of their services, and so the caseworkers also have to transport the children to visits with their families. So it's a lot. They are completely overwhelmed and doing the very best that they can, but it's challenging.
And I can respond to that a little bit also, because I have visited in Dark County with the caseworker from Job and Family Services in Hamilton County, but the foster placement is managed by a different organization, ECHO. So that's a different caseworker, and the services are also being provided by NECO and not Hamilton County, because he's receiving some one-on-one therapy. So there is a lot more when you've got that kind of distance going on in terms of kind of working out.
Over here. You guys are asking really good questions, very in-depth. It's good.
Just like your opinion, on the local level, who do you think has been the most effective advocate for these kids, as far as people in government?
Well, you know, the funny thing about Prokids is that we find advocates in our community, our staff and our CASA volunteers come from all different backgrounds. They come from all different political beliefs, and the wonderful thing is that we all get around kids. I think everybody can agree that children need help, and so I would love to be able to say that it's only the Democrats that do wonderful things for us, but there are some members of other parties that are also helpful.
Right. A slow cascade of questions. It's good.
That's good.
I
I hope this does not promote anything we don't want to know about. There isn't any possibility, given the numbers that are rising and the crossing of the border of children who are separated from their parents, that we might return to orphanages in the United States? Do we have any orphanages in the United States?
Very good question. No, we do not have orphanages anymore. They worked for a very long time, and then people started to realize that children living under shift care did not do well, and really living in a family was more effective for them. And so the orphanages have gone by the wayside, which is a good thing. But you brought up an interesting point about the unaccompanied minors coming into the United States. And one of the things that Prokids does is we do advocate for unaccompanied minors. They are in our community, as you know, and they often have family that live here. And so what we have to do is make sure that whoever their sponsor is we need to make sure that that's a safe place for them to be. We do not care about their status, about the parent, the sponsor's status. All we care about is that that is a safe place for these children to be, and those children need a lot of help. The journey that they have made, the sacrifice that their parents have made sending them here because of the atrocities they are facing, it is incredible. And so the fact that they're here and safe is wonderful.
Wait. Maybe you've answered this already and I've just forgotten. How many children are in how many foster homes are there in Hamilton County?
Not enough, and I know that is not an answer. I don't know, but it's not enough for the 4,100 kids. Yeah.
Are the majority of the children receiving psychological services, including those children that are unaccompanied minors?
Yes. There is often a language barrier with our unaccompanied minors. They often speak local dialects, and so there's some challenges facing, how we can most effectively communicate with them, but yes.
You have a question, Sid? No? He wants to volunteer.
Wonderful. Few more years.
We've got more time, guys, if you've got more questions.
I have one.
Good.
I actually work in juvenile court. I didn't know that was the subject today. I came to I just want to say that the Prokids CASAs are one of the elements that create a tremendous trust among the children. The time they have to spend with the children creates a bond, and the children often disclose to them things that they aren't ready to disclose to strangers. And you can't get these kids in counseling in less than 6 weeks, sometimes more. And so this person goes out almost within a week and starts developing that bond, and the consistency in the time they spend with the kids is invaluable in creating an atmosphere not only where the child can thrive, but where they disclose sometimes what has happened to them. So it's absolutely invaluable. Thank you.
Now you have something.
Do you have some literature to share with us?
Sure, yes, I am happy to.
If you want to be a volunteer, folks, here it comes.
That's right.
If you would like to be a CASA or somehow involved in this program, we have the literature for you.
So we're passing out one information.
And you can always make a donation.
The little postcard that Shannon is passing out is for our breakfast event. That's our fundraiser in May. So whether you would like to volunteer or be a donor, we would love to have either one of you. Thank you.
Yes.
Just because we're finished early doesn't mean that we're finished here, folks. There's a lot of work that this organization can use help with, so please think about offering your help. Yes?
Where can you talk about the orientation for potential volunteers?
Oh, sure. So we hold 1 hour snapshots, and that is what is listed, I believe, on the back of that longer sheet of paper. It's a free, we don't ask you for anything at those information sessions, but it really gives you a good idea of what a CASA volunteer does. Some of it you've heard here today, and there's a different story that we tell to kind of give you an idea of what you might be getting into. And you get to see our building. It's that big white building on Taft and Burnett. A lot of people have driven by it, going to the hospitals or going up to UC and wondering what was in it. And we are in there now. So yeah, thanks, Doc.
Ladies and gentlemen, wait a second, we have another, just a moment.
Not really a question, but you guys actually presented here about 1.5 years ago, I think. And I had a CASA license plate for 12 years now, I think. And actually 1.5 years ago was when I finally, after hearing Prokids here 1.5 years ago, I finally decided, I think it's time I finally go ahead and become a volunteer. So if you've been thinking about it for a while.
Tell us about the license plate.
Tell us about the license plate.
It's what is an extra $10 a year or something, and maybe a little bit more than that. It's an Ohio license plate that supports CASAs across the state for an extra $10. And the one I have, from the year I have it, there's a really cute picture of 3 little kids. So it's a nice way to just contribute to it.
That's nice to know that we actually got a volunteer when we had this program over 1 year ago. Thank you. What do you know? Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, this is your time to step up. Thank you. You may speak to our speaker and ask individual questions. We can be here till 2 o'clock, but we're happy to have had you. You have wonderful questions. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being part of what we're trying to do here in terms of finding out about what's going on in our community. We think it's really important. And heck, we got a volunteer last year. We could get another one this year. They're really wonderful. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you for being here. Mary Kay. Thank you to Prokids.